Live. I'm here with Jim Ryan, who is the host of Peak Northwest and also a breaking news reporter here at the Oregonian. It has been a while since we've had a new episode of Peak Northwest, and we actually have one premiering tonight at 7 p.m. Pacific time. So I brought Jim on to talk to me. This is our normal Friday happy hour. It's a really hot day. I'm sitting out on my porch. And so I figured we would have a chat about Peak Northwest and what it's like to try to produce an outdoors show right now when a lot of people want to be outdoors, but it's a little bit more challenging than it's been in the past.
Yeah, it's been tricky, Julie. Thanks for having me on. I'm really excited that we have a new episode for the first time in many months now.
Yeah.
We've been on a schedule of shooting and releasing, having a new release every month for one of these Peak Northwest episodes for quite some time. And COVID just kind of made that really not a responsible thing to do for quite some time. So we've had, one episode in the cooker ready to go for several months now, but hadn't been really okay with releasing it. And in July, Julie, we finally got around to saying, you know what, we feel like we can put some to feel safe. We can do things a little bit differently. We can pick a location that's pretty close to home and make this shoot a pretty low-key one.
Right.
And I'm sure we'll get into specifics of what we did and kind of how we did it, but I'm really happy with how it turned out.
That's great. Have there been any specific challenges in actually filming it? Like you said, we kind of held off for a few months. When was the last episode? Was that March?
The last episode came out in either February or March, Julie. It's been a long time.
So it's been a while. So we've jumped back into this. You're back out there. Brooke's back out there with you. What is there anything that's been especially challenging trying to do this type of show right now during the pandemic?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the most challenging thing about it, Julie, is that Brooke and I are both working on so many other things right now amid the coronavirus pandemic and a social justice movement that's particularly active here in Portland. Brooke Herbert, our videographer on the series and a video producer for the Oregonian and Oregon Live, she's been extremely busy and in fact is releasing a project of her own here very shortly.
Yes, we're actually going to talk about that tomorrow.
Yes, about 100 Days of Protest, here in Portland. And she's been very busy. I've been very busy. And that's been the biggest thing, is just physically being able to take the time to work on something that isn't pressing news right now. I know, Julie, you've been very busy. That's just the name of the game right now. But in terms of actually shooting one of these episodes, we've had to have a couple new considerations. One is simply the health and wellness of Brooke and I traveling together to shoot something like this. So just the nature of producing video content is, and you do this all the time, Julie, but it's using microphones. It's getting footage close up to somebody else. It's kind of entering someone else's personal bubble. And Brooke and I kind of have creatively worked around that in some ways. I'm miking myself up maybe instead of her doing it for me. Trying to limit the number of people that we bring on a shoot with us. We had one shoot that actually ended up falling through where a friend of mine was going to drive separately and we were going to kind of do the outdoors activity together, but travel in the car, independent of one another. So it's just kind of all of those daily COVID considerations that we all have throughout our lives, but a couple more specific ones for video production.
Right. Yeah, sound has been across the board for us. I think sound has been a big challenge in the COVID era. We have those nice fancy microphones that you can't actually put up near anybody's face right now.
Not ideal.
Brooke in particular has been really creative about coming up with some solutions for that, for sure. So let's talk a little bit about the episode that's premiering tonight then. I don't want to give too much away because we're gonna see the whole thing tonight. But as we were prepping for this, I kind of asked you, what are like the 5 key things that people should know about the episode that's going to make them want to watch it? But let's actually start with, where did you go?
Yeah, so we went to the Salmon River Trail, which is a really gorgeous, it's a 14-mile trail that runs near the Salmon River, as one would imagine, roughly in the Mount Hood area.
Okay.
We picked this trail, a section of this trail. We did about 8 miles of it for a couple of reasons, Julie. One is simply it's close to town, right? Brooke and I both live in Portland. We wanted to pick something that was logistically fairly simple and close to us. We went on this shoot in July, so this was a time, and it still is a time where we're all considering how far we're going to do stuff. But even more so, perhaps in months past, trying to stick reasonably close to home for this assignment. We picked it also because it has really great campsites, and we're going to get into that here in a little bit. But we backpacked in a couple of miles, camped, left our stuff at camp that next morning, did a little day hike up to a viewpoint, and then got out of there. And it was a really perfect weekday excursion for us here in the Portland area.
Great. Yeah, and that's definitely been a consideration with, all of our travel coverage is, the recommendation is for people not to go more than 50 miles from home. And I know you guys have been trying to stick to that. There've been, some exceptions, but trying to be careful when we can. So let's talk a little bit more then about the episode itself. You said you wanted to talk a little bit about camping.
Yeah. So this was a trip that we designed, basically backpacking, where we didn't have to work that hard to get some really cool moments. So I talk about a lot in the outdoors, Julie, like the work to reward ratio, how hard you have to work to go do something really cool. And I thought the Salmon River Trail was a really good example of that. So we parked at this trailhead, which is kind of roughly near Welch's, which is up on the way to Mount Hood off US 26. Or Welch's is on 26. But anyhow, the trailhead near Welch's. And we hiked for maybe, I'd say solidly a couple miles. I didn't map it exactly, to one of several really nice established backcountry campsites, reasonably close, right along the river, kind of sandwiched between the river and the trail. And these sites aren't, marked with kind of in the way that they would be in a state park or something, where there's a little, it's campsite number 6, and here's your water spigot, and here's your fire ring. But it's clear that people have camped there quite a bit in the past. The spot that we were lucky enough to get was very close to the river, just a short walk off the trail. It had an established fire ring made out of stones, even had one or two benches kind of made out of logs and pieces of wood. And the camping was exquisite, just out there in the forest, going to bed with the river rushing, right nearby. And all of that lining you up really nicely to kind of keep hiking for a couple more miles the next day and go up to this viewpoint, which I take it you're probably going to want to talk about as well.
Right. Before we move on from that, though, so I'm admittedly not somebody who goes camping in the backcountry a lot. I love the outdoors. I love camping, but I tend to be a little bit more of a glamper. I like my very nice air mattress. So I'm usually going to go to a campsite that is a little bit more like what you were describing, where it's numbered and there's a shower within, not too far of a distance. But what you're describing in that campsite, is that unusual for backcountry to have that, like the nice benches and the?
That's a good question, Julie. I mean, I would say this is a very well-established backcountry campsite. A lot of the time my destinations are up in the mountains, where you're probably not going to have that level of established niceness for your campsite set up there. But it was very good. I would highly recommend it to folks who are looking to, we don't need to hike 10 miles here to access this site. We're accessing, within a couple miles of the trailhead. And there are sites closer to the trailhead than the one that where Brooke and I stayed. So to answer your question, it's a really nice one. I thought it was great. And I'll throw the asterisk on there where probably a lot of other folks think it's great too. And if you're looking to score one of these sites, one of the stewardship things that I'd like to mention is you might be better off going in an off time, right? And right now that might be a weekday,
right.
Is most likely a weekday. I would imagine Labor Day weekend right now, maybe not your best time to go think you're going to walk in and snag one of these sites, though it's reasonably possible, but it'll probably be busy out there.
Good to know. So you mentioned the Viewpoint. Can we tease that a little bit without giving too much of the episode away?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, the Viewpoint is fantastic, and folks can surely go online and probably find a photo or something of it. But for the sake of teasing visually the look and feel of this place, I mean, you're walking through this really dense, mossy, gorgeous forest, and you kind of wind your way up to this rocky viewpoint, rocky perch, way above the river, which is super far down below. You got a sea of trees out in front of you. We had it to ourselves on a weekday. It was supremely gorgeous. I think it was a Friday in July, and I just kind of remember thinking, might have even said out loud, I think we're doing it right here, Julie. This is okay.
That's great. So another thing that you mentioned as we were getting ready to do this today was your campsite meal. That sounds like that was a highlight of this trip and this episode.
Yes, it was. So, Julie, you might guess that I have some minimalist inclinations as far as camp meals go. I'm maybe the pack of ramen or the little pasta meal or something like that usually gets me by. I'm not usually one to make a real extravagant camp meal. But we weren't going very far this time, and Brooke decided to scheme up just this really amazing camp meal. She brought us salmon fillets. We had corn on the cob and rice, and it was something else. Easily the best camp meal, backcountry camp meal I've ever had. And let's be honest, Julie, it's better than what I'm going to make tonight for dinner. It's better than most of what I make in my home kitchen. And was just really special and super fun.
That sounds great. Yeah, like I said, I like to glamp. I'm a gourmet s'mores person on my camping trip. So that sounds wonderful to me. So is there anything else specific to the episode that you want to talk about to get people to watch tonight?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say that we aimed for an adventure, a trip that is something that is a template for something Mount Hood hikers, Columbia River Gorge hikers, Portland area people can go do, right? And can probably feel, I can't speak for other folks' comfort level, but can probably feel reasonably okay about going to try to do right now. I just kind of like to rattle off some of the considerations, right, that folks should maybe be thinking about as they go out to do any number of trips like this, right? So it's important to note Salmon River Trail is not the only place where you can do this kind of thing. And folks get rightfully a little concerned sometimes when we shout out, highlight a specific trail or a trail system or whatnot. With a little bit of research, folks can go backpacking any number of places here in the Pacific Northwest. And this is just one such destination that really worked for our needs. I'd say as far as COVID goes, I think it's really smart to be bringing with you or wearing some sort of mask when you're close around to others. So whether that's something that you pull up, over your nose and mouth when you pass others, if you prefer to wear it all the time, obviously the risk of transmission in an outdoor space is less so than if you're, say, at a crowded bar. But I like to have the opportunity to, at the very least, turn away and, kind of stay out of folks' way, or have some sort of face covering that you can pull up when passing others. The other consideration is you'll see us in the video making a fire to prepare our meal. And keeping in mind, we did that in an established fire ring or fire pit, essentially. Folks had clearly made fires there before. We checked ahead of time to make sure fires were allowed where we were going. And, we were generally good stewards about it, right? And now, in the midst of fire season, is maybe not the time, even if they are allowed wherever you're going, to make a fire. And I'd encourage folks to check fire regulations wherever they are camping, because this is maybe not a fact, this is a bet, this is my guess, but I'd guess that fires are probably not allowed in a lot of places
right now.
Yeah.
Well, and there's several active wildfires in Oregon right now, so it's certainly something to consider, and even if it is allowed, maybe.
Yeah, just wanted to hammer home that messaging because we are releasing this ahead of a very busy Labor Day weekend where we want folks to stay safe out there, obey regulations, and don't put too much stock in our salmon fillets. Make them some other time, over the fire. Right. Now, not the time.
Great. So, is there anything else you want to touch on before we wrap up? It's great to have Peak Northwest back. I'm pretty excited.
Yeah, I'm excited too, Julie. It feels like a little bit of a breath of fresh air, for me personally, amid kind of a lot of much more important stuff that I've been covering recently, a lot more newsy stuff, stuff that has demanded a lot more of our attention, obviously, as a newsroom, and rightfully so. But I think it's important to be able to offer, a little something lighter and more fun when we can. And Peak Northwest is a good example of that. And I know I really get a lot of solace from being outside right now. That's one of the main ways that I've kind of been able to, maintain, a level of happiness and fun during the pandemic. And I hope that others are able to get outside and at the very least get a little bit of inspiration and fun out of watching our episodes.
Yeah, one of the best ways to do a little self-care is to get out in nature. And so I think that this is needed in the midst of all the very newsy news that we've had so far this year.
Yes.
Well, great. Thank you for joining me, Jim. I'm very excited to see the new episode. It's going to premiere on our Facebook and YouTube tonight at 7. And it's going to be great.
Yeah, folks can check it out. And of course, take a gander through our previous episodes. We've done all sorts of fun stuff. And we're going to have more, hopefully, in the coming months as well. So looking forward to those too.
And Peak Northwest has its own Instagram account at Peak Northwest on Instagram. And there is a podcast as well that goes even a little bit beyond some of the adventure-y type stuff that you do on the video series. Yeah,
I would love to plug the podcast. All sorts of good travel and outdoors recommendations, ideas, talking to cool people. If you're into podcasts, look it up, also called Peak Northwest. I think it's a lot of fun.
Great. All right. Well, thanks for joining me. And thanks for everybody else joining us. If you have questions, drop them in the comments, and Jim and I will come back and answer them later. And otherwise, have a great Friday afternoon.
Thanks, Julie.